Chapter 41, Pain. The next dorm wasn't that much better. I was sorely tempted, after classes, to go up to the relative quiet of the roof instead of Searchlight's room, but I wanted to be with my friends and so did Ravage. Laserbeak was mostly indifferent to Searchlight, and only mildly disliked Breeze and Ratchet at this point. She came along because she was bored. "Hey, Wave," Searchlight said as I came in. Ravage jumped off of my shoulders and onto the back of Ratchet's chair. He hung his tail down, so it swung between Ratchet's data pad and his faceplate. "If he doesn't move that thing, I hope he knows I will pull it." I went over and took my spot at Searchlight's desk. "Hey," he said. "I was thinking this morning that we're going to need to replace Master Yokotron's class with something." I shrugged. I had spent the free drawer on the roof. I wouldn't mind not signing up for another class. It was only an elective. We don't need it. "Okay," Searchlight said. "But I was thinking, maybe we could spar on the roof during that time. Stay practiced, you know." I nodded. "Hey," Breeze poked Searchlight. "The rule." "Okay," Searchlight said. "We could practice up on the roof." "Practice what?" "You know, Circuitsu. Instead of Yokotron's class." Breeze nodded. "We really do need to follow the rule, though. Thanks for talking out loud." "Could we make a new rule?" I asked. "And everyone just not think at all while I'm here?" "I'm cool with that," Searchlight said. "Breeze. Are you doing okay, Soundwave?" Breeze asked. "You were having a really hard time last term." "I'm okay," I told her and pulled a datapad out of subspace. I was going to need to study extra hard this term because it was harder to concentrate in class. I started working through my homework, but gave up when Searchlight decided we should all have a discussion about his favorite lobbing team. Art should have been easy compared to the other classes. I didn't have to think about anything very hard, and neither did anyone else, but the class next to us was really intense. They took a pre-test on the third orn of school, and that pretty much wiped me out for the rest of the orn. Instead of Searchlight's room, I took Laserbeak down below the city and we flew around until I found somewhere quiet. Then I was so tired I fell into recharge, and when I woke up my chronometer read that it was the beginning of the off cycle. I got up and flew with Laserbeak back to the school. Searchlight was sitting with Ravage in my room. Both of them were worried about me. "Wave." He got up and came over. "What happened?" I shrugged. "I went flying and lost track of the time." "Oh," Searchlight said. "Okay. You shouldn't scare us like that. I mean, we figured you'd gone flying, but it's past lights out." I shrugged. "Sorry." "Nah, it's fine. I'm glad you're not kidnapped or stuck somewhere. Sorry for invading your room." Ravage leapt up onto the desk, then to my shoulders, and Searchlight got up and left. It was past curfew, so he'd get in trouble if he was caught out in the hallways. I felt kind of bad about that. It was mostly my fault. Things didn't get better from there. It got to the point where I couldn't remember what it was like not to be in pain. I went flying almost every orn after classes, or went down under the city. Far above or far below, everything was quiet and peaceful. Flying was dangerous though. I was so tired that as soon as it was quiet, I started to shut down even if there was nothing between me and the distant ground but atmosphere. Searchlight and the others were starting to think I was ignoring them. I stopped talking to them as much and came to Searchlight's room only on occasion. They were worried but they had other things to occupy them. Searchlight and Breeze were perfectly content to spend time with each other, and Ratchet was always busy. So I was essentially on my own. And my range continued to grow. Cable Reach had talked to my other teachers about letting me take tests on my own. Not all of them did it, because it took time out of their schedules, but the majority of them were willing. When tests started, I began to spend a lot of time after class in the teachers' offices, and I couldn't always go flying afterward. I wasn't doing particularly well on the tests either. It was just too hard to study for everything. I took Cable Reach's first test in his office while he wasn't there. He didn't want to accidentally give me any of the answers. When he came back in, he graded my test before I left. I did not do very well. "Soundwave," he said quietly when he was finished. "How wide is your range this term?" I shrugged. "Not too bad," I lied. "Are you sure?" "It's harder material. His stutter's not that bad. But I've heard from all his teachers that he's like this. Soundwave, if you're having a hard time, please let me know." I looked down. "There's no nothing you can do. I can come up with something. Primus, he is having trouble. How wide is your range?" I hesitated. "Tell me. I can usually hear 3 or 4 other whole classrooms." I said. Doesn't having that many in your range give you a processor ache?" I shrugged. "Soundwave?" "Yes," I whispered. It never stopped. Cable Reach looked down. "What can be done about this? What are our options? This isn't acceptable." "It's okay," I said. "If it's bad enough that it's affecting your ability to study, then we need to treat it somehow," Cable Reach said. "I'll get in contact with Crescent and discuss it with her." "No," I said. "It's okay. She would probably take me out of the school." I wasn't quite to the point where I wanted that. Maybe if I trusted Crescent more, but she did not tend to consider my best interests a high priority, and my preferences were even lower on the list. "Soundwave," Cable Reach said. "If you can't concentrate in class, I'm sure we can find some sort of solution to this. But I have to run everything by Crescent. I'm not sure why he's so afraid of her. She's perfectly reasonable every time I talk to her. Did she abuse him as a sparkling or something?" I shook my helm, though she had most certainly done that. And of course she was always polite around Cable Reach. She wanted him on her side because he would come up with all the solutions for keeping my ability secret, and all she had to do was approve things. She wouldn't want me to move back in with her. If I told her about this, she would withdraw me from the school and send me somewhere else. Wherever that was, even if it was quieter, it wouldn't have Searchlight, Breeze, or Ratchet, and I wasn't altogether sure I would be able to keep my symbiotes. I told myself the pain wasn't bad enough for that yet. "Why, you can talk to her. But I'll probably be fine until the end of the term." "Yes, you'll be able to push through, but that's not the same as being fine. You shouldn't have to put up with being in pain for a quarter of a forn." "Soundwave, that's ridiculous." I sighed. "We'll work this out. Don't worry. Can you hold on for a few more decairns?" I nodded. "Thanks." I didn't trust adults on principle, probably because of Crescent, but there was nothing so comforting as knowing there was one who had promised to make things right somehow. I left Cable Reach's office feeling a little better. I was even feeling up to bringing Ravage and Laserbeak to Searchlight's room, so I got them and crossed the student wing. Searchlight's room was empty. I was confused for a moment before I remembered him asking me if I wanted to come see a holofid with the other 3 after class. I hadn't declined, but I hadn't said I was coming either. They must have gone ahead and left without me. I sat in my spot for a while, but realized they'd feel bad if they came and found me here by myself. So I got up and went back to my own room. You know what we need? Ravage asked. I knew what he thought we needed. I promise we'll keep them in line. And they'll be able to help. You know they will. That was true. It wasn't that I didn't want them here, I just worried about them getting in trouble. If you don't tell Searchlight how much trouble you're having, I'll tell him, Ravage threatened. I sat down at my desk and started doing some overdue homework. I'm fine. I hate it when you lie, Laserbeak said. You're not fine. And Ravage is right, we should bring Rumble and Frenzy here. Then you'd be able to recharge more easily. That was true. Maybe I should suggest that to Searchlight and Cable Reach the next time I saw either of them. The next Dorn was awful. I didn't have any tests myself, but the advanced class in my range during art did, and then there was another one I could hear during Cable Reach's class. I was in so much pain that I barely made it back to my room. My energon levels were low, so I really ought to go down to the energon hall, but it was so crowded all the time and I knew it would make things worse. I didn't have the energy to go flying, so I just curled up in the corner of my room that was the quietest and waited for the pain to retreat to a manageable level again. About 2 doors after classes ended, Searchlight came into my range. He was half angry, half worried. He wasn't sure why I wasn't coming to his room anymore. He figured it couldn't be because of my mind reading because his room really wasn't much more crowded than mine if you took into account the fact that I could hear 3 or 4 rooms away in every direction. I got up as he approached and went to open the door for him before he could request entry. My symbiotes followed me. Hey, Wave, Searchlight said. You okay to talk right now? I nodded and went to sit down at my desk, looking away from him. So, what does that mean? Okay, Searchlight said, stepping inside and letting the door close behind himself. I know I haven't been the best friend lately. This past break I mostly ignored you and now we're back here and, I don't know. I just wanted to let you know, even though I haven't really been paying as much attention as I should, we do miss you. And, I wish you would trust me. Wave. I didn't move. I'm not like you. I can't tell what you're thinking. You have to talk and let me know what you're upset about. Come on, you're my best friend. Don't you trust me? I miss you coming to my room and hanging out with us. I'm not going to just let you disappear. You didn't think I would, did you? I still didn't move. I was torn. There was nothing he could do and he would have to know that. If I just told him nothing was wrong and started coming to his room again, they'd figure out pretty quickly that I wasn't alright. I just had to get through this term. And then what? Look, Searchlight said. I am not giving up. I hope you understand that. If you don't want to talk right now, I'll leave and come back later. I looked down. Okay, Searchlight said. Fine. See you in art. He turned to leave. Say Irrtliegt. He froze. I shuddered. Oh, Primus. Soundwave, Searchlight tuned again and took a step toward me. What the slag, I haven't heard his stutter that bad since before Breeze helped him fix it. I just juessed. That's it, Searchlight came over and sat down on my berth. I'm not leaving here until you tell me why you've been avoiding us. I pulled a datapad out of subspace. It had been a long time since I'd done this, but it would be easier than talking. That much was certain. I'm sorry. I've been really tired all the time. Searchlight read it and frowned at me. So in other words, you're in so much pain you just come here and collapse every morn after classes. I shrugged. Primus, Searchlight looked down at the datapad. We have to do something about that? I guessed. Searchlight's lip plates quirked up toward a smile, but he felt sick. I can hear the pain in his voice now. I'm listening for it. What can I do? I held out my hand for the datapad, and he gave it to me. Bringing Rumble and Frenzy to the school might help a little. Okay, well, we can do that. Sure, he said. I'll talk to Keepsake and Cam. I'm sure Cam will be glad to get them out of the house. I hope Ravage can keep them under control. But if it will help, and it becomes necessary for me to skip classes to help babysit them, I will. And I mean that in all seriousness. I looked up at him. The worry he was feeling didn't help me with mine. Thanks, I said anyway. You should have said something sooner. Have you talked to Cable Reach? I had to take a test for his class and I did so poorly he insisted on knowing what was wrong. Searchlight nodded. Mech, I am so sorry I didn't notice before. I was careful to make sure you didn't. There's not much you can do besides worry, and I didn't want you to worry. Hey, Searchlight said. I'm worried, but I'm also a little relieved because I understand what's going on now. You don't have to keep all your problems to yourself, Wave. I mean, everyone else shares their problems with you, even if they don't want to. You've got a right to complain once in a while, especially if something's really wrong. Oh, Primus, it probably never stops hurting. Slag it, Wave. See, this was why I hadn't wanted to tell him. I guess we knew this was going to happen eventually, didn't we? You're probably going to need to leave the school. I shook my helm. Wave, you can't just push through this. I don't want you to leave, but if your range is big enough you can't concentrate in class and you're in pain all the time, surely that's not worth it. I took the datapad. You and Breeze and Ratchet are the only friends besides Ravage that I've ever had. It's worth it. No, Searchlight said. Not if you're too tired to come hang out with us. I'm going to miss him so much if he has to leave. Maybe Rumble and Frenzy will be able to help enough that he can stay here. Can we go talk to Cable Reach? I want to see if he has any ideas. I nodded and pushed away from my desk. My symbiote stayed with me, Ravage on my shoulders and Laserbeak clinging to my back. I hadn't intended to leave my room that orn. I'd found if I stayed put, I'd eventually get used to the minds around me enough that I could recharge at least. But I followed Searchlight through the hallway and we went to Cable Reach's office. I was worried he wouldn't be there because he usually left by that time, but we caught him as he was getting ready to go home for the orn. Searchlight knocked on the door and he admitted us. Oh, Soundwave, he said. Come in, both of you. How are you doing? I talked to Crescent. About Soundwave. Searchlight asked. Cable Reach nodded. So what's going to happen? Searchlight asked. Well, Cable Reach said, there are a few options. Soundwave could drop out of school and study on his own for the rest of the term. He'd probably be able to pass the entrance exams for the academy at Eacon if he wanted. Of course then he'd have to go there and he'd have the same problem again, but worse because there are more students, more crowds, and a lot more for everyone to think about. I'd always expected to go insane by the time I was old enough to go to the academy. Of course, I shouldn't have been worried about that. I should have been worried about this pain stretching out to fill my entire existence. If my range continued to grow, I'd need to go live somewhere far away from civilization and eventually somewhere away from the planet. Is there another solution besides leaving? I asked. We could talk to your medic, Cable Reach said. Crescent's wary of that, because he'll be curious, but you can tell him you don't know why you're in pain. He'll probably be able to give you something that helps, even if he can't figure out the problem. Some kind of upgrade or drug that at least lowers the pain level. Searchlight looked down. He didn't like that idea. That's not necessarily a permanent solution either, Cable Reach said, and you might have to experiment with that a little. But there's a good chance you'll find something that helps enough. I don't like that solution, but it might help you get through this term if that's what you want to do. Okay, Searchlight thought. But first we should try something less extreme. Okay, but we were also thinking we could bring a few more symbiotes. There are 2 more that belong to Soundwave that my creators are taking care of. Cable Reach nodded. That sounds like a good first thing to try. The question is whether it will be enough. It wouldn't, but it would definitely help some. Yes, Searchlight agreed. I can bring them next door. And let me know how that works, Cable Reach said. It would be best if we didn't have to do anything drastic. Not to say that we can just ignore this. We have to find some sort of solution to this problem, some sort of permanent solution. Searchlight nodded. Soundwave's going to be okay, right? Ravage asked. He's going to be okay, Cable Reach said firmly. Searchlight nodded as well. We left Cable Reach's office and walked back to my room. I was about ready to collapse once we got there, and Searchlight was going to leave and let me rest, but I stopped in the doorway and turned around. Searchlight. Yeah. Thank you. For what? Why, Mech? If it weren't for you, I'd be dealing with this by myself. Searchlight shook his helm. That's so wrong, you know? Crescent really is a glitch. You are more than welcome to any help I can offer. Always. I nodded. It didn't get rid of the processor ache, but it kept me here and helped me keep going. I had friends here who weren't willing to give up on me. He left. He brought Rumble and Frenzy the next door. I wondered what would happen if they got in trouble. Crescent would probably be able to talk the school out of forcing me to get rid of them, but first I'd have to talk her into doing so. And I didn't think she'd like the 2 of them very much. They were being decently good for Searchlight, sitting on his shoulders. I let him into my room, and he put them down on my desk. Are you okay? Frenzy asked. I thought he was hurt or something. Course he's not okay, Rumble said. He's got a slagging eternal processor ache. How is he supposed to be alright? It hadn't been long, but I'd already missed them. Ravage hopped off of my shoulders and I realized I was picking up at least some of the happiness from him. He had missed them. He knocked Rumble over and pounced on Frenzy. Hey, Searchlight said. Ravage, come on. Don't start a fight. I don't think Soundwave's room can handle that. I waved him off. They were fine. I didn't have much that was breakable in here. Ravage would keep them from leaving the room, and that was all I needed. Anything else you need? Searchlight asked. I shook my helm. He hesitated, standing in the doorway. Okay. Let me know if there is, he said before walking away. This Orn hadn't been quite as bad as the previous one. Not good enough that making the trek to Searchlight's room was worth it, but not so bad that my stutter was acting up. So, there are rules. Ah, Frenzy thought rules. Again. Why are there always rules? How many? Ravage wondered. I can't make them follow a long list of rules. The first rule is that you need to stay in this room unless you're with me and I've given you permission to leave. They waited expectantly. The second rule is don't bother Laserbeak. Thank you, Laserbeak thought fervently. The third rule is don't break the desk or the berth or damage the walls, ceiling, or floor. If while you break my things I can replace them, but if you break the parts of this room that belong to the school we'll have trouble. What about the chair? Frenzy asked. Don't break that either. The door. Oh, shut up, Rumble shoved Frenzy. You know what he means. Did you really just give them permission to break your things? Laserbeak wondered. This is going to be interesting. I would prefer that you didn't break anything, I said. But be especially careful of the things that aren't mine. Another rule, Ravage said. When Soundwave's here, we all stick as close to him as possible. You're here because he's sick. The goal is to help him, okay? The twins nodded. Thank you, I said. Ravage climbed back onto my shoulders. Frenzy decided to take up a post on top of my helm, which actually kind of hurt, but I wasn't going to say anything about it, and Rumble sat in my lap. I did homework for a while, but only got about halfway done before I was too tired to keep going. I curled up on the berth with my symbiotes. It was significantly easier to recharge with 4 of them. The next morning I came back after class feeling better than normal. I collected my little menagerie and took them with me to Searchlight's room. Ravage jumped onto Ratchet's chair, but the other 3 stayed with me. Breeze got up from my typical spot and rushed over to embrace me. Soundwave, are you okay? We were getting worried. Searchlight grinned. Hey, you came. Sit down, Breeze said. How are you feeling? Better than normal. I sat down in Searchlight's desk chair, and Breeze moved to the berth to sit by Searchlight. The processor ache isn't the only symptom, is it? Ratchet asked from his desk, not looking up from what he was reading. I'm also tired. You should find a medic you trust, Ratchet said. Or you could die. No one knows how to treat your specific problem, obviously, but mecha with similar symptoms usually have some sort of improper coding in their processor. If you don't find a solution to that sort of thing, it can be fatal. I tried not to feel sick. I was glad he hadn't said that out loud. Frenzy, who had clung to my arm on the way over, climbed down to Searchlight's desk. Hey. He said, staring at Breeze. I know who you are. Breeze smiled at him. Yeah, I'm Breeze, remember. Yeah, Frenzy said. Hey, Soundwave, it's Breeze. He's really adorable, Breeze thought. She held out her hands and Frenzy let her pick him up and put him in her lap, where he sat contentedly. It wasn't fair that he was so well behaved around her. She probably wouldn't like him as much if she saw what he was like most of the time, clumsy little scraplet. I was a little surprised at that thought for a moment before realizing it hadn't come from me. It was jealousy from Searchlight. It should have been amusing, but instead it frightened me because I hadn't originally been able to distinguish it from my own thoughts and emotions. Sometimes I couldn't remember which class I was in, especially during art where I didn't need to think that much. And studying was getting even harder. There was no way for me to read anything and retain what I had read. I just couldn't concentrate long enough to commit things to permanent memory. It was hard to access anything from my memories too, even when I was alone now. I sat and listened to them talk and think and feel, and then went back to my room to crash on the berth. The next few warns were like that, and then I had a test and afterward, I skipped Cable Reach's class to go curl up on my berth. The room was a mess because Rumble and Frenzy were destructive when they were bored. Ravage apologized for not being able to control them, but I ignored him. They all gathered around me, but it still hurt so much that I couldn't move. I was very tempted to force myself into stasis, but I wasn't sure if it would stop the pain, and it would certainly frighten my symbiotes. They might think I was dead. When classes were over, Cable Reach came into my range. He was coming to check on me and see if I was all right. I got up and dragged myself over to the door to open it. Soundwave, he said. Are you all right? You didn't come to class. He's not all right, Ravage said. I think he must have had a test or something. Okay, Cable Reach said. Come with me. I've had Crescent make an appointment with your medic. Where are you going? Frenzy asked. Cable Reach surveyed the disarray of the room. Well, I no longer wonder why he didn't want to bring those other two here. Laserbeak flew up to the ceiling. You'll be coming back, right? Of course I'll be coming back. I said. Good, Ravage said. Do we have to stay here? I nodded. But you need us, Frenzy said. I'll be all right. You behave while I'm gone. Ravage climbed off of my shoulders and hopped down to the floor. Their worry was making me worried. I wished I could reassure them that I'd be all right, but I didn't know. Cable Reach walked beside me through the hallway. Searchlight's door was open, and as we walked past it, Searchlight got up and came out. What's going on? He asked. We stopped and turned around. We're taking Soundwave to see his medic. Searchlight nodded and jogged over to us. He put a hand on my shoulder briefly. Take care. We'll be thinking about you. I knew. Searchlight walked back to his room and Cable Reach and I continued down the hall. I called for a transport to take you home. I think I'll go with you just to be sure you get there all right. That was good. There was no way I could walk through the city all the way to Crescent's house, and I was too tired to fly. The transport was waiting outside the school. He was a sentient transport, a large, friendly mech. He and Cable Reach chatted a little, but I just turned my screen off and sat still as we were driven through the city. Moving so fast and brushing minds with so many mecha was not good for me, especially after the orn I'd been having. By the time we got to Crescent's house, I could barely stand up. I must have managed to hide it pretty well because Cable Reach didn't notice as we got out and walked to the front door. I let us in, and Crescent came out of her office and walked over to meet us. I really wish you wouldn't be such a problem, Soundwave. I'm always having to put things off in order to baby you. Thank you for bringing him, she said to Cable Reach. The medic's coming here in half a hour. I've called the secretary at the school and told her Soundwave might be staying home next door due to illness. Thank you, Cable Reach replied. I'll leave you here then. He shot me an encouraging smile and went back over to the transport. The door closed behind him. What is this about, Soundwave? Crescent said. You've been getting processor ache since you were a sparkling. Why are you making such a fuss about it now? I shrugged. She huffed a sigh. Well, if you can't stop your range from expanding, then it's no use complaining about it. What are we going to tell the medic? We aren't explaining it to him, that's for certain. I don't trust him to keep quiet. So what do we tell him? I shrugged again. This is your problem. You are going to have to come up with something or I'll just cancel the appointment. If you can't go to school, I can always just send you out to live somewhere remote. We could tell him we do on T know why. Just leave out the mind ready eam. I suppose, Crescent said. It saves both of us from needing to come up with some convincing story. But then he'll be trying to figure it out on his own. I nodded. And I thought you'd fix that stutter. I shrugged. I'm going to my room. Your appointment's in a drawer, but it's only a 10 bream walk, so just I guess you can find something to do until then. She walked away. I sat down in the front room and put my helm in my hands, trying to wait out the pain, counting astroskins as they ticked by. Her study was in my range, so it wasn't exactly quiet, but it was much better than the school, and the processor 8 didn't get any worse. Eventually, Crescent came back out and we left her house. I wasn't so sure I could walk the whole way, but somehow I did. Crescent's medic welcomed us in. Good Orn, he said. How are you, Crescent? Very well. Better than Soundwave at least. I'm going to have to play concerned caretaker now. You know, you're lucky I was in town this Cairn. Yes, the medic said, turning his attention to me. I'll want to hear him talk before I do any scans. I hear you've been having problems with a processor ache. I nodded. Can you describe that to me? I've always been a little worried about this one. I'm curious, I've never been allowed to see all of his files. My whole helm hurts, most of the time, I said. And I'm tired, and it's hard to concentrate in school. Well, they must have done something about that stutter. Also, if past experience is any indicator, this mechling's not prone to exaggerating. How long has this been going on for? I hesitated. In truth, it had been going on since I was a sparkling, but I couldn't tell him that. It started toward the end of last term. That was when all the processor aches had merged into one. He nodded thoughtfully. Has it been getting worse? Yes. All right. I'm going to do a scan, just to check your vitals. I nodded, and he scanned me. He was surprised at the pain readings. He also noticed that my energon levels were low, and he thought that might be causing my exhaustion. Searchlight had started bringing me energon to spare me from going to the energon hall, but I had to share it between my symbiotes and myself. Also, my processor was working too hard, which meant I needed more fuel to function normally. Well, he said. Well. Crescent asked. If he's been in this much pain since last term, you should have come here before. Soundwave, Crescent said. How long has it been this bad? Don't answer conclusively. I shrugged. He's just so unapproachable doesn't sound like something I would say here. He never talks to me. I'll need to do some more scans, the medic said. But something is definitely not right here. And that was a pathetic excuse. They should have come sooner. I looked down. First, though, he said, let's deal with that processor ache. He came around behind me. Can you open this panel at the back of your neck? It took me a couple of tries, but I got it open and he started messing with my sensory grid. The pain faded to almost nothing and I felt myself relax for the first time in more than a cortex. I wanted to cry with relief. Is that better? I nodded. And now I could pay attention to what exactly he discovered while he took some more scans. When he was finished, he stood and thought about it for several astroskins before he spoke. All right, he said. Crescent, Soundwave. Yes. Crescent said. Just tell me what we need to do. Primus, it must be pretty bad if he's so hesitant to talk. There's definitely some unusual activity in Soundwave's processor. Oh, great, I knew we shouldn't have done this. The subroutine that is responsible for putting memories into long-term storage is being overtaxed. I don't know where it's getting all of its data from, but it's doing far more than it ought to. Well, we knew that. You weren't supposed to know that, though. My theory, the medic said, is that it's probably a discrepancy in his coding that's causing him to put multiple copies of everything he sees, thinks, or hears into permanent memory storage. Possibly 30 or 40 copies at once. Oh, Crescent said. Is he going to run out of memory space? No, the medic said. Not for a long time, at least. You don't need to worry about that. The main problem here is that because he wasn't built to store that much at once, the memories are getting fragmented, and it's damaging the subroutines as well. That's where the pain is coming from. If the problem continues, he could lose the ability to store and retain accessible memories. Oh, Primus. Crescent stared at him. I looked down. That, I could believe. That was pretty much how it felt. The only thing he wasn't getting right was that the extra data wasn't multiple copies of my own experiences. Crescent thought. He stores everyone else's thoughts in permanent memory all the time. Why the frag is he doing that? It wasn't my choice. It stored itself there and I couldn't stop it. So, Crescent said at length. What are you supposed to do about something like that? It's impossible to fix without modifying Soundwave's coding directly. We don't have programs that solve unique problems like this, at least none that do a good enough job. Fear turned in my tanks. That was going to involve surgery. It would be a moderately dangerous procedure and would take perhaps a decade to prepare for. There is no other option at all. Crescent said. None I know of. It's a miracle he's still functioning right now. The coding of that particular routine is quite damaged. Crescent looked down. You wouldn't need to find a different medic, the medic said. I'm qualified for the procedure and have performed similar ones in the past. Successfully. Can we think about this for a while? Primus only knows what they'd find in that freak's helm. Of course, the medic said. I'm sure this is a lot to take in for both of you. But I warn you that there may not be much time. You should have contacted me about this earlier. The pain is really the biggest problem, Crescent said. Couldn't you just give him something for that? I certainly will, the medic said. But that's not a long-term solution because it won't do anything to solve the problem. We'll have to be careful because it isn't a physical injury and it's hard to find anything effective on that sort of pain that doesn't have unpleasant side effects. Crescent sighed. If we let him perform surgery, Soundwave, we may need to let him in on the secret, but I do not trust him to keep his lip plate shut. Thank you very much, she said at length. I nodded. The medic did so as well. Always glad to help. I'm sorry this is such bad news. At least it is treatable. Crescent said. We're going to need to perform some more powerful scans, the medic said. Ones we'll need your written permission for. And we ought to try to fix this as soon as possible. The longer you wait, the more likely there will be permanent damage and that the procedure will fail. Crescent nodded. That sounds like a terrible idea. I can't believe this is happening. At the very least I know there will be things in those scans that don't make sense. Primus beneath, what do I do? We will need time to think about it. The medic nodded. I'll need time to review the data as well. And I'd at least like him to come in for some deeper scans, maybe next Orn. Crescent hesitated. It will help me to be certain I'm diagnosing this right. Why is she so nervous about a scan? It won't be dangerous. Make it the Orn after, Crescent said. I'll make an appointment. The medic nodded. Very well. You don't question her. I know I made it clear she's endangering Soundwave by putting this off. Is there anything else you need? No thank you, Crescent said. But thanks again for meeting with us on such short notice. The medic looked at me. Poor mech. It's no trouble. Now, Soundwave, I'm going to send you a jar of little capsules. I'll have it delivered to your house and you should get it within a drawer or so. I want you to put one in your next cube of energon, which you ought to take as soon as possible because you're running low right now. It should help with the pain. Let me know if there are side effects, though, and we'll try something else instead. Thank you, I told him. And meant it much more than Crescent's thank you. And put one capsule in each cube of energon you take. Your pain grid will go back to normal over the next several drawers, so you'll want to have the medicine in your system before the processor 8 comes back in full. I nodded. We left and walked back to Crescent's house in silence. Crescent did not want to let them do scans or perform surgery on me. Personally, I thought I'd rather not die. But there was also some appeal in continuing to pretend everything was fine. So, Crescent said once we were back inside and could talk openly. What do you think would happen if I sent you to somewhere remote with no one else around? Would it get better? And you'd better not shrug at me. I think it would, I said. But I don't know. You think something in your processor is actually damaged? I nodded. Well, unless you want the whole world to know about you, we're going to need to find another solution to this. We could bring him in on the secret. I'd been surprised in the past at how well Mecha kept my secret. But maybe I'd just gotten lucky. How well do you think he would keep his lip plate shut? I was with Crescent on this one. Not very well. I'd have to threaten him pretty heavily. Yes. Do you know how exhausting blackmail is? I shrugged. And I thought we agreed not to tell anyone else. We had agreed no such thing. She had demanded that I refrain from telling anyone. I should just send him away. Ugh, rumors would spread. What am I to do with him? I'd get lots of sympathy if he were to offline of some incurable processor problem. I wonder how much I'd have to pay the medic too. She stopped mid-thought. Hit, he heard that. I looked down. Well, I said. It's not my decision, is it? No, it isn't. If you decide to let me die, then there isn't much I can do about it because you'll just threaten my friends to keep me quiet. Crescent looked down. Maybe I should go to my room so it's easier for you to decide without feeling guilty about it. She glared at me. We really need to get him away from that searchlight meckling. He's a bad influence. Just let me know, would you, when you've made up your mind about whether or not I get to live? I'll need to start figuring out where to say and my symbiotes. Oh, go to your room, Crescent said. You know I'm not going to just let you offline. Sometimes it was hard to tell. I went to my room and curled up on my berth, missing my symbiotes. I didn't even have Ravage with me. At least I didn't have a processor ache. I was so tired that I slipped into recharge after a few breams despite all the things I had to worry about.